Good evening, Cedar Falls, and welcome to tonight's committee meeting. We'll start with a roll call from Madam Clerk.
Schultz.
Here.
DeBoer.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Harding.
Here.
Canfield.
Here.
Sires.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you very much. So tonight we will kick off with Finance and Business Operations Committee and a report from our friends from Grow Cedar Valley. I assume we're going to start off with Miss Carrie Dara.
I came in and it said it still smells like a new car, so very nice to be here. Good to see a full house, and thank you all for having us. I'm Carrie Dara with Grow Cedar Valley. Normally we have our board chair here. Mike Malera was our board chair this year from VGM. He was not able to join us, but he did send his appreciation to all of you for our work together and our partnership that we've had for many, many years. So hopefully he'll be able to join us at our next update, but couldn't be here tonight. It's a busy time of year for everybody. So actually I was very pleased to see all of you. Again, everybody's got busy schedules, so seeing everybody here tonight is very, very good for us. I'll just start with a few comments and then turn it over for our economic development update with Lisa. Some of you know this because you've attended either Good Morning Cedar Valley or some of our other events, but we've had 2 new hires this fall that have joined our team. One of them is with us tonight, Stephanie Detweiler, and you'll hear from her in a bit. Stephanie is our new Talent Solutions Coordinator. And then we also hired Nicole Salas, and she's our Director of Communications. And both ladies have grown up in the Cedar Valley. Stephanie, I think, has been here most of her time other than school, and Nicole has lived in New York City for 17 years and decided to come back to the Midwest and even closer to home in the Cedar Valley. So we snagged her, and she wasn't able to be here tonight. Actually, several of our teammates are out under the weather, like half the office. So you have the A-team here tonight, so we're glad to be here. A couple updates, as I mentioned. We did hold our DEI Summit, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Summit this fall. Many of you attended. Thank you. It was very well attended. We had nearly 262 people there. We already are planning the 2023 summit. So each year it gets bigger and then more necessary for people to participate. So we appreciate those of you that were able to join us. In addition to that, I know you saw me last at the microphone on our placemaking effort that we're working on. Of our 4 strategic goals for Grow Cedar Valley, talent and workforce and placemaking are the 2 top goals, along with business retention expansion and then an internal reorganization. But the placemaking really does go hand in hand with talent and workforce. It's about creating that community and that experience that makes those who, or not makes, but invites those who are living here to stay, and those who used to live here to come home, and those who don't know anything about us to take a chance. So placemaking really is a big priority for us. And again, the last time you heard from me was when we talked about the Destination Iowa Grant. I was hoping we'd have a decision before our presentation to you tonight, but we've not heard from the governor's office. We do know there are still some funds left because we've been keeping track of all those allocations, and there still is enough money, but we still don't have a decision. And we do appreciate your partnership in that and that collaboration, because we know what we heard was that that was very, very important to IEDA and the governor's office. So fingers crossed that we'll hear better news in the next few weeks. And what the other thing we know about that project and that application is that what has come from that and the conversations that we've had, that we know we need to have clear messaging to sell and engage the community on these projects too, not just invite other people to come here, but those who already live here, we know we need to create a lot more engagement in these conversations, so that's top of mind. Additionally, we've started our Cedar Valley Leadership Institute. This is the 10th year I've been facilitating the group, but we've been doing it since the 1980s. It was called Leadership Investment for Tomorrow before that. It's been part of our organization when it was taken over by the Waterloo, from the Waterloo Chamber. So we're on our 10th year under my leadership, and we have 43 students representing 33 companies of the Cedar Valley. And that to us is the critical piece, is that these are folks, emerging leaders that their employers have recognized as emerging either to their companies or to the community, and that they're getting to know other emerging leaders in other industries and other companies. So we're next, Wednesday of this week, we have our multicultural tour, and we'll be on a bus and we'll be all over the Cedar Valley, understanding and learning about the cultural diversity and richness that the Cedar Valley has for this group. Before I turn it over to Lisa, our government affairs is up and running. We have our reception tomorrow night with our elected leaders for the legislature. And we've already approved our agenda. It goes hand in hand with the state Iowa Chamber Alliance agenda. Again, talent and workforce are the top priorities. And so we will be having our updates to you through our government affairs along the way. And then also, I think many of you already know this, but Grow Cedar Valley, we've moved our office, and I think I mentioned it maybe at our last update that we're going to. But in September of this year, we moved from the second floor of the Tech One building to the third floor. And while that isn't remarkable, the reason is remarkable, and that's because Hawkeye Community College is creating one of the 5 best in the country training centers for automation and robotics. So I can tell you that the manufacturers in Blackhawk County and in the Cedar Valley are very excited to know that there's going to be a trained workforce that they hopefully can tap into. And they should get started. It was supposed to be second semester, like next month. Supply chain issues didn't allow that. So by fall, you'll see another class emerging from that curriculum. So this time I'd like to turn it over to Lisa. Again, what we try to do is not replicate in our updates what you have in your packet, but there are some things that are really important to reinforce. So I'll let Lisa take it from here, what's going on with economic development.
Good evening, members of the council. We appreciate your time this evening for the update, semi-annual update. And to echo Carrie's comments, it's really nice and bright in here. And we really are enjoying the smell back there we've been talking about as we walked in. Anyway, as I said, we appreciate the collaboration, and we've seen growth with expansion from our existing businesses. Celebration a couple months ago with the ribbon cutting of Zeidberg for their new facility in the industrial park, while Cuba continues to move forward with their expansion as well. We're excited to see where in 2023 some of these projects and additional other companies that are talking about expansion in Cedar Falls, where that is going to take the community. So it's a pretty exciting time as we get past this pandemic. All the projects are driven by having shovel-ready sites right now. 85% of real estate searches are about speed to market. What makes Cedar Falls more attractive is the reduced land costs coupled with a shovel-ready site, as very few Iowa communities offer this pairing. And I guess I really didn't realize that, and for years, many years, I've taken advantage of that. But based on conversations with members with the Iowa Economic Development Authority, Cedar Falls is unique with that, which is going to draw more attention because of the certified site. We also supported the city's effort to be certified shovel-ready by the state of Iowa. And again, this certification will give Cedar Falls even greater exposure to project opportunities and keep Shane very busy in the coming months and years. All the leads we've been seeing are projects with large capital expenditures with square footage of more than 100,000 square feet of new construction. We haven't been seeing requests for existing industrial buildings like we were a year ago, and like I've mentioned, most are looking for turnkey shovel-ready sites, as it seems to be the trend because there is very little existing industrial space available in the United States to be had. Conducting lead generation has changed over the decades, and the way companies are identifying communities and available property. But one constant is that it's still a numbers game, just like any other type of selling. More companies have to be reached to generate a handful of lead opportunities, and we've discussed this before. We just started a lead generation campaign in September. We identified a list of 630 companies to target, and so far the outreach has been 1,902 outreach. So it gives you a sense, and that's a combination of phone calls and emails to give you a sense of the amount of companies we have to go through, as well as the number of times we have to contact to identify interest in expanding, one. Two, if they do have an expansion plan, either immediate or long-term, would they consider the Midwest? And then three, would they consider Northeast Iowa and be willing to have a conversation with us about it? So far with this lead generation, we've identified one qualified lead, and a second lead is scheduled in person on December 13th. That is new information, not in your packet, since the packet had already been sent out over a week ago. The third appointment that was identified as being rescheduled has unfortunately been permanently canceled due to the unexpected death of the C-level executive we were planning to meet with. So we feel pretty bad for the company and the family that was involved, but we decided, given the circumstances, we didn't want to pursue it any further because of changes with this business. I've just recently reviewed additional list of 200 companies expanding our geographic area. Originally, the 630 companies were Midwest-based, so we're expanding that a little bit geographically and currently doing outreach by phone and emails. We'll continue to do that. We've also been participating through Site Selection Guild to meet up with leading site selection consultants to understand changes in corporate site selection and pitching our location for current and future leads. This has paid off, at least I know one time within the last couple of years, where a consultant said, I've seen a lot of your proposals over the years, so I wanted to come visit on behalf of our client and look at your sites and find out more about your community. This summer, Cedar Valley became an associate member of the Guild and applied and has been invited to attend the Guild's March 2023 conference, which is the gathering of the top 60 site selection consultants around the world. They usually invite economic developers, but at a very small ratio, just so it doesn't become overwhelming for these consultants. And the reason why that's very important is, just like with anything else in business, we're seeing a growth of retirement of site selection consultants. This connection right now, as there's a transition to new consultants that are taking over, it's very important for us to establish new relationships with them moving forward with the new generation of site selection consultants. The process of site selection is very long, and we all know there can be one winner, and we've gotten some pretty good projects in the past, but we appreciate your long-term support in realizing that. We continue to conduct existing business visits, with workforce being a top priority, like Carrie just mentioned. These are equally as important as we identify growth opportunities from the business already here. 95% of the capital investment happens from our existing businesses, including those that initially set up new locations in Cedar Falls and continue to be supported by the city and GCV staff for growth and retention. For GVC, sometimes it's just not brick and mortar after they're here, and they continue to expand. Shane can handle the brick and mortar. Some other things that we help the existing businesses on an ongoing basis includes workforce retention and attraction issues, along with legislative and incentive advocacy for their business growth in Cedar Falls. And establishing long-term relationship with the managers, owners, and HR resource director. And Stephanie will talk about it in a moment, but she spent a lot of time. She started in September and has been meeting directly with the existing business and their businesses and meeting with the HR directors. Whether it's an existing business or external prospects, it's all about relationships and economic development. This past summer, our organization was reached out by IEDA. They were planning a trip to Europe in November, marketing trip, and wanted assistance to connect with corporate officials with Tabraka and Zeidberg to make courtesy corporate visits like they often do when they're traveling internationally. When GCV notified the city that the state officials were planning to visit corporate headquarters of two of their existing businesses, city staff decided to accompany the state as well to attend those two meetings. And from what I understand, I haven't had a chance to talk to Shane how that went, but I talked with the state this morning, and they felt pretty good about the visits and the growth opportunity for these two companies. GCV also supported the city staff on this trip with regional marketing material when they traveled internationally, but also trying to schedule additional appointments based on some long-term leads that were generated from previous international initiatives that we've conducted and that I've talked about in the past during our updates previously. Thanks to Rudolph de Jong, happens to be his birthday today. We also were connected with him and had a conversation with Robobank out of the East Coast to see how we can collaborate to encourage European investment here. So we're going to continue those conversations. They occasionally, maybe a couple times a year, have informational sessions in Europe about doing business in the U.S., and we already put out that carrot that we would like to see if we could participate in something like that and travel back to Europe and talk to the companies in the Netherlands and other parts of Europe to see about their expansion. Well, we found out pretty quickly, we found out pretty quickly when those European companies expand, their first conversation, or want to expand in the U.S., their first conversations are with their banks. In talking with the state, the sentiment of European companies right now and their expansion in the U.S. is it's necessary for their future operations. The companies that are privately owned are more agile in the decision-making for U.S. expansion. To that end, we will be exploring the return to Select USA this coming May. They moved it up from June, and collaborating with IEDA once again on their exhibit booth. We put a pause on that during the pandemic, and 1 year it was canceled because of the pandemic. IEDA attended this past summer, Select USA Summit, and they were encouraged by the activity and interest that they were seeing about, from international companies wanting to talk further about doing business in the United States and possibly in Iowa. I'll just refresh your memory, Select USA Summit, it's sponsored by the Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C., and the purpose of it is to attract foreign direct investment in the United States. In every single state in the continental U.S. Attends that show for lead generation opportunities. Carrie had mentioned it briefly on this, but I'll go a little bit further. I mentioned Cedar Valley Manufacturers Association during our last update, and in March, Grow Cedar Valley Hawkeye Community College, UNI, in Iowa State University, Cirrus, we began partnering with manufacturers to relaunch the organization. It's an industry-led association that prioritizes common issues for their industry, and this association includes some leading manufacturers in Cedar Falls. I just thought I'd mention that. Now they've figured out what their top 2 agenda issues. Their priority areas right now include collectively advocating an alignment of the IGNITE program that Carrie just talked about. That's going to be on the second floor of second floor of the Tech Works that will be operated by Hawkeye Community College. Our small and medium-sized manufacturers in particular, when they saw the program and really what it did, it feeds them future workforce 5, 10, 20 years down the road. And the other thing they want to do as manufacturers is roll up their hands, go into the schools, and talk about careers in manufacturing. It may not always be the C-level executives. It might be the HR director or the salesperson or someone off the floor. They want to do that as early as elementary school. So they're working with the school districts and figuring out how to assemble presentations that will be age appropriate. So that's where we'll be hitting them and building that funnel of workforce for future generations, and that will affect the Cedar Falls Industrial Park and those manufacturers and even distribution companies as they look to expand. So having said that, that's a good segue into what Stephanie will update you on. Just a little bit background on her. If you didn't see it in our material, Stephanie's background is in HR, private sector. She has her certification, but we were fortunate that she was able to join us after spending 10 remarkable years at Target Regional Distribution Centers, leading HR in some capacity over there. So without hesitation, I'll turn it over to you, Stephanie.
All right, well, hi. Thank you for having me. Like Lisa and Carrie mentioned, I'm Stephanie Detweiler, Workforce Solutions Coordinator. I have been in role for about just 3 months, so not too long, but I'm excited to be here. So as mentioned already, workforce is a huge priority for our businesses. As I've been talking to HR professionals, that's definitely the top of mind for them. So some of the things that I want to highlight that we're working on in regards to workforce, first is our Live the Valley campaign. So before I started enrolled, they had worked on this Livability magazine. I don't know if anybody's seen it yet, but I have copies for the council members if you'd like.
Sorry, I'll take it.
Oh, okay. So with that magazine, actually Nicole, who's our Director of Communications, and I, since she started, basically, we've been working on something a little bit bigger than just the magazine. We wanted to come up with a campaign to help us attract and retain workforce here in the Cedar Valley. And so it's kind of multifaceted. There's a few parts to it, but basically that's the goal, right, is to attract and retain workers in this area in order to strengthen our workforce in the Cedar Valley. And so we have a few different tools that we've come up with to do that, to help support that work. So one of them is the magazine, and that's really a tool that's meant to help HR professionals and recruiters, give that to people that are potentially interested in relocating here so they can help, attract them to the area, help them know what it's like to live in the area. And so that's kind of the point of that tool. We've also, we're relaunching our coaster campaign, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with, back in, I think it was 2014, Danny, who worked for Grow Cedar Valley at the time, he had worked hard on getting these coasters put into the bars and restaurants in the area. I think there were some on Main Street, and it went over really well, and the whole point was it was for the holidays, so people, when they're home for the holidays, they could see these cool coasters and maybe take them home with them, just as a way to kind of remember what it's like to live in the Cedar Valley and how great it is. So we're actually relaunching that, and we'll have some for the holidays as well. And so we'll be giving them out to businesses in the area to do that. And then also the other thing we've relaunched is our Live the Valley website. So again, that was kind of back in that 2014 timeframe that it was created, and just over time, it just needed a little bit of updating. And so that is live and it's updated, and it's got this digital copy of our Livability magazine on there as well. So a lot of good tools for HR professionals and recruiters, and that's really kind of the point of that campaign. I think Lisa mentioned too, a couple of my priorities. I've been meeting with HR professionals of businesses all around the community. And for Cedar Falls specifically, in the time frame that this packet was put together, I had met with 5 different businesses in Cedar Falls. And the themes of those conversations are really very similar, that the top of mind thing for them is staffing and attracting people that are skilled workers for their different businesses. So obviously it's nothing earth-shattering or new. It's just what we have to put a focus on, and that's what my work will help support. So with that being said, one of the main focuses I have in this position is I have put together a workforce advisory committee, and that's currently it's only 5 members. I wanted to start small, and then my hope is to grow it to about 20 people. And it's with HR professionals from different companies around the Cedar Valley. And the whole point of that is to help guide my work and make sure I'm prioritizing the right kinds of things, because I want it to be relative to our HR professionals and companies. So we had our first meeting last week. It went over really well. What they think is the priority right now is to focus on how do we retain people in the community. So any things that we come up with from there will probably be a little bit focused around that, whether that be events, ways to connect people to each other. Those are just some ideas, but we're just starting, so it's really exciting for me to see where this group goes with it. And then lastly, just in the packet about workforce under barriers to employment, we talked about several different things like transportation, immigration, and our DEI summit. But for immigration, we did have a J1 visa information session in September, which was put on by Hawkeye, and that went over well because actually the mayor was talking about tonight that he just did a tour with a lot of the Jamaicans that are here on J1 visas. He did a tour around town, and Western Home has done an awesome job with getting these workers in from other countries, and so we wanted to help other companies kind of learn what steps they needed to put in place to actually make that happen. So that went over really well, and Norman Grant, who works for Western Home, he's been a good resource to other companies as they're trying to get that started as well. And then the other thing that's kind of more recent with that is that Lutheran Services has taken an interest in this community to potentially have a support team here to help with immigration and refugees as well. And so they're kind of on this fact-finding mission if they feel like this would be a good community for them to kind of set up shop here and have an office located. So that's kind of another thing in the works, but that is all I had.
Thank you, Stephanie and Lisa. I know we're out of time. So if you have any questions burning, you can ask, or you know how to find us. We're happy to come back, or happy to meet with you one-on-one, whatever. But again, thank you for your partnership. If there is anything like just quickly you want to ask, any of us, Lisa, anybody that's here, please feel free. But again, I know we've used our time hopefully wisely for all of you too. So yes, go ahead, Gil.
You may have mentioned a little bit quickly on the airport advocacy. Anything that you want to just kind of throw out real?
Sure, quickly, I will. So when we rebranded, went through our rebranding and our transition, that was one of the priorities that we heard from businesses from an economic development standpoint, especially our larger businesses. Having that airport and having the air service was very, very important. And so we do have the Air Service Working Group that was created through Grow Cedar Valley. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the information coming from them. I know the consultant and two of the consultants are coming next week, and they're going to be going to dinner with the Air Service Working Group and spending some time going over a lot of the data that's come in. There are significant changes in other airports across Iowa that will have effect on the Waterloo Airport. The Dubuque Airport lost their service to with American Airlines, but they did bring in another service that's limited, but another service. And then I think Mason City's changed too. So a lot of those changes could affect this airport. And I think you've got a really good working group that is, they're really dedicated and committed to making sure that they take advantage of some of that data and some of that information. So we would be happy to give you more information. We do have specific data too. Yes.
Thank you, Carrie.
Okay.
Anyone else have any quick questions?
Quick one here. The fact that we got really nice high-speed internet in Cedar Falls, fastest in the nation and so on, how much do we target the technology companies in the West Coast, Silicon Valley?
I'm sure, Lisa, you probably have more specific data that you use with that. I mean, I know that we work with CFU, and I know early on when they became the gigabit city, there was a lot of marketing that went on that Grow Cedar Valley helped with, but I guess that would be a question for you on what of that information you use. You can close it out.
Close it up, okay. Yes, we had, as Carrie said, started working with CFU and the city some years ago when that first came out as 1 gigabit city. With technology companies, we found out immediately how big a pool of companies that was, and we tried to narrow it down specifically to companies that were doing what some of the other companies already were doing in Cedar Falls. That includes app development primarily. One of the other targets we're doing right now is geared toward semiconductor chips, realizing with the federal grant that they received that there will be some expansion of those companies, and we have identified some of those companies in our list. The firm that helps us with that lead generation has identified some companies, and we're currently trying to do outreach to them and identifying interest. The other thing that we found out over the years is that every company has a thread, and a big thread, of fiber optics in their system. It can't be overlooked, whether it's manufacturing, distribution, food processing, office applications, that they need high-speed internet. So it affects every array of business. It really, and I think we all know that. It also is a very immediate marketing strategy. We put in with our marketing material that we have high-speed gigabit service here, and that it's continuing to growing. CFU continues to stay on the forefront of the next iteration of capacity versus resting on their laurels as 1 gigabit. So there is, and we also promote the PC Magazine's review and of CFU's capacity a couple of years ago about being the number one provider of internet in the U.S. So we did get some play out of that as well. And we've also shared it in the past with site selection consultants, so they were aware of that too, that that's going on right here in Cedar Falls. Long
So
answer.
the reason I brought that up was many companies want to get out of the West Coast environment, and we're a prime target for that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that, but it's a bigger jump for West Coast companies to move to the Midwest. Like Las Vegas and Arizona, a little bit more palatable because they still have the weather. Even before the technology we have today, and this is going back in the 90s, IEDA would have a staff person living in California trying to generate business interest, and that would have been in the 1990s. Wasn't very successful because it was just more of a geography focus. If the business had some type of connection with the Midwest, they'd certainly move here. We like what has been done with the organic and entrepreneurial growth of the technology businesses here. Jam City located a facility here because they were going after the workforce, and the workforce did not want to move to San Francisco. So they established a facility here to accommodate their needs, and honestly, we've seen it before, they're jealous of the speed here, but they're not ready to give up the locations that they already have to make this their corporate headquarters.
True. There's a lot of people, though, that go to Montana and Idaho and enjoy the Four Seasons and ski and so on, so I wouldn't let the weather deter.
No, we don't.
Just a thought. Okay,
That's a good question.
thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
And thank you again.
Thanks for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we will turn it over to Mayor Green, I believe.
Technically, it's me.
Oh,
but
is it?
That's
so
okay.
Sorry, I was like,
That's all right. We're going to turn it over to Mayor Green after me. So, welcome to Committee of the Whole, December 5th.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Excellent.
We have 3 things up real quick. Did you
Yes.
want to you're going to introduce each one?
I will.
All right,
I've got
so
my timer here, so I'm going to keep us up to hopefully 6:50 for you.
Perfect. So,
So there are 3 proclamations that I brought, or excuse me, 3 draft policies I brought forward to you. And the reason why I'm spelling some of these out is because of some research that I've done into the mayor's position and what my authorities are, or what any Cedar Falls mayor's authorities are. It's a little different from some other cities and some other executive positions where a lot of times you'll see language like other duties as compatible with the nature of the office. So it's like a catch-all. Okay, these other things that aren't listed, the executive will do that. Well, in our case, it spells out further that says, in addition to the duties enumerated in this division, which was all the things that I'm required to do by council and allowed to do, says the mayor shall perform other duties compatible with the nature of the mayor's office as the council may from time to time require, and as are required by law and conferred upon by the mayor upon the mayor by statute. So what that means is, if it's not listed in the code, I don't have the authority to do it, and I fully respect that. And that came up with the trick or treat night question, like looking what gives me the authority to set that. And I saw in the code it was just custom. There was no actual authority for it. Same thing with proclamations, I discovered. There's nothing in the code that even hints to the fact or alludes to the fact that the mayor issues, in Cedar Falls, issues proclamations. So this first item, this first policy is consideration for a new proclamations policy, and I mentioned that during goal setting. In that paragraph 3, the bottom line or end result is that as the mayor, I wouldn't initiate proclamations on my own. They would come from residents, they could come from the council or from staff, but I'll no longer do them myself to bring them forward. The council would approve all city proclamations, and then I would no longer read those proclamations during the council meetings. I'd find another time suitable to do that. So the policy itself, I think, is very straightforward. I mentioned, how they can be requested, that there's a time, we need that at least 30 days in advance to get it processed properly, which I think is reasonable. And then also, at the bottom of page 13, there's section 2C. At a request earlier today, I would like to change that text on there where it currently says, as a draft, it says, requests must be submitted to the city's communications specialist at least 30 days prior. What I would like to change that to is, requests must be submitted to the city at least 30 days prior. So there'll be somebody designated to take it or to actually handle it, but I don't want to necessarily call out the communications specialist for that. Because all these proclamations would go to, by citizens, it'd go to proclamations@cedarfalls.com, just like the board requests go to boards@cedarfalls.com. So it just takes the people out of it. So there's that. And then the last page of that, on the packet, page 14, there's a part that talks about proclamation approval. So I would like to change the language in that for 3A, where it says, the communications specialist shall convert the submitted and edited text into the city's standard proclamation format and then shall submit all requested proclamations for council approval under a single cover memo. What I'd like to change that to, before we send it forward, if you're amenable to that, is to say, strike out everything before submit on the second sentence, or excuse me, the second line. So it would just read, the mayor shall submit all requested proclamations for council approval under a single cover memo. And that makes it a little bit more generic of what it'll look like. But the way I see it is these proclamations would come to you just like the alcohol permit applications come, just as a row, and the council would approve those as a consent agenda. So once those are done, if they're signed by council, council could vote to pull out individual ones to not approve them if for some reason they wish to. But under the approval, then I would broadcast it in some way with that person who requested it and give some advertising outside of the council chambers. And it might even be before the council meeting. We'd have people in here, but it wouldn't be considered part of the meeting itself. So that's the policy as it is. Open for, if you have any questions or want to deliberate that. I'm only at 6 minutes on this one, so well within my time budget.
All right. Open it up for anyone from council that has any questions or thoughts on this specific policy. I think it's a good idea. It opens up a lot of avenues to generate new interest in proclamations, and it actually makes a concrete process for how someone can go about doing it. So I read through it and I support it. But
Mr. Chair?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to double check. We're already functioning in this capacity as far as the editing work and putting it into the proclamation. That's not adding an extra workload.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think I like it as well. Makes sense to actually spell out what we're doing.
Yeah, and then also it would allow me to put in the proclamation text, it wouldn't just be as Mayor of Cedar Falls, I could say Mayor of Cedar Falls with the authority of the city council or with the whatever. So that way it's all of us and not just me kind of out on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I guess I would look for a motion to move forward with taking this policy to the next step, to take it to council.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, thank you
right,
very
there
much.
we go.
I think it'll be a much more understandable and democratic process. So the second item I've got for you also is the council policy for public awards and recognition. This isn't so much overall a new policy. We're not changing anything except just clarifying what we do in terms of awards and recognition. And I have to bring it to council because these aren't the city staff awards. These are ones that we're actually giving out to the public. There typically is a cost associated with it to purchase the plaques. And I just wanted to make sure that the council was on board with the policy and that it is a council policy. So in this, the only real addition in the awards program would be the creation of a key to the city. Which I was surprised coming on as mayor, like we just didn't have a key to the city. And I bet I could like buy a key to the city and put somebody's name on it and give it out, and there wouldn't really be objection from council, except it's not very, again, not very democratic. It's not the whole council acting with that or with the authority of the council. So what I would like to do is establish a key to the city, and it notes for the recognition of that, it's under item 3B1A. It says, the mayor may award the key to the city to a member of the public who reflects great credit on Cedar Falls through nationally or globally noteworthy actions or who otherwise demonstrates extreme merit. So I'm thinking that one might be like 1 or 2 a year at the most, but it'd be aside from that, the next level down would be a Distinguished Service Award, which is part 4 below. So there are different hierarchies, and I guess my question here for council to discuss is that something, if you're willing to have me issue these certificates, whether it's the key to the city, which would actually be a nice plaque you can see on there, or if it's going to be a Distinguished Service Award like we did with Marty Holst a couple of weeks back, is that something that you want to grant the mayor the independent authority to do for all of those, and maybe just consult with council informally? Or do you want the council to be the approver for those awards? So I'll see if there's anything else in here that I need to get across, and then for council discussion. Yeah, I think everything else is straightforward, like the lapel pin, who receives those, the challenge coins, the existence of those. Honorary resident, which I think would be great for somebody who's done quite a bit for the city. I can think of a few people who've invested money here. They don't live here, but I'd love to just make them an honorary resident. It would apply, give no legal authority, but I think it'd be memorable for them. They'd appreciate that feeling like part of our community. So that's really it for what this proclamation or the proposal does. And I guess that big question for me is council okay with it? And does council want to be the approvers, or are they willing to delegate that authority to me?
All right, we'll open it up. I saw Councilmember Schultz.
So I think there should be some discussion, either informally or maybe formally, so we have that communication and know what's going on, if you will. So what do you guys think, formal or just a discussion?
I guess,
On any recipients, you mean, or?
Yeah.
what's been the precedent in the past as far as how it's been done?
So the way I get it, and staff can help me out with it, John Cruz issued several awards, and I don't know if he went through council for it, for the citizens. And in my case, I've only had 3. One was Marv Matfield. A while back, we had the Distinguished Service Award for him, and that was basically like staff recommended. So I was happy to do that. And then 2 additional ones, Marty Holst was one of those. In none of those cases did I specifically go to council for approval on, but I could, in my policy for boards and commissions, I say in there that someone who serves for at least 20 years will normally receive a Distinguished Service Award. But if that's the case, like if council wants to be involved, then I would take that out of there.
I mean, I don't see a reason personally to involve council, except for possibly on the key to the city.
Mhm.
That would be one that might merit, I mean, if someone's going to serve on a board or commission for 20 years, then yes, they should get a Distinguished Service Award. And I don't think the council should deny that or approve that. That's just, you've earned it. But when it comes to the key to the city, it would be worth a conversation, although it gets tricky because I wouldn't want to politicize it, in a way where
Well,
then
it
all
kind
of
of
a
is
sudden,
politicized
where
already with me.
it is, but as soon as it gets published in the agenda and then someone says, oh, I don't like that person, and they start contacting their council reps to say, you can't vote, So I guess I'm going to step back and say, I'm all for the mayor doing it.
I agree.
And then with maybe, I could put in there with consultation of council.
That would be
Yeah,
good
I
for me.
think somehow we need to
To know.
I totally
about it.
agree.
know ahead of
Yeah,
time,
I
Okay.
agree.
have some knowledge ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay, with council consultation.
Councilmember Cruz?
And then if you have a group of citizens that want to recognize somebody that might be flying under the radar, possibly, where they could bring it to your attention and then go
Okay.
from there.
Yeah, and there's a couple other awards too, for the Distinguished Service Award. There's also underneath that, I have a new Certificate of Merit, which I don't believe has ever been offered here before, but it's just a lower level that doesn't quite meet a DSA, Distinguished Service Award, but still we want to recognize that person. And it would be different levels of public view as well. So the key to the city, I would imagine, would be in the council chambers or in the council foyer, all council members would be invited. It'd be a big deal. And it'd generate a lot of press. It'd be part of, we'd have KWL here more than likely as well. And these would be nationally known figures. I've got a few in mind, but I don't want to say names just yet. But you can probably guess who some of those are. But having that publicity, I think at a lower level, Certificate of Merit, maybe is just at a council or before a council meeting, small presentation.
Yeah, I agree. I think adding just consult council so we're in the know. I'm happy with that. Anybody else? So with that, I'd entertain a motion to move forward with this and take it to council for approval with the amendments we just talked about.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that one passes as well.
Excellent, thank you
Next.
again. And the third one's interesting. This is more of an idea. I'm not sold on whether we do it this way or not, but I wanted to present something forward to council as an option. And this regards the boards and commissions interview process that we have. There's not, as far as I can tell, there's not anything in writing that says that the council committees will interview candidates for certain boards or commissions. And I kind of understand why that happens. There's especially in the past when the mayor just appointed somebody to a commission and there wasn't a vetting process ahead of time, the council members individually or as a whole had no opportunity to otherwise to find out who these people were, right? So that's where the Board of Adjustment, the Library Board of Trustees, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the Utilities Board of Trustees, all their members all come before now one of the standing committees to be interviewed. So this could go one of two ways here for your discussion. The first one being, just like we did for the reappointments, we decided, I think back in 2020, that when somebody was coming for a reappointment, we didn't need them to come back up here for an interview because they'd already been interviewed the first time around. So we did away with that, and we set it so they only come before the committee for an interview if they're a new person, a new applicant. Since we now have the process, like for the mayor's boards and commissions process, where a council member is part of the selection panel for that group, I question whether we would need to have that person, like again, the library board of trustee come forward. Do we need them to be before council, or does council feel like they've been vetted enough by that point that they wouldn't need to see that? You still would have the approval in the council packet and their application, so questions could be brought up about that person then. So that's one option. The other option is, as this policy states, it just spells out who, in writing, which committees will interview candidates, and then also provides just some additional expectations for what that would be. And I say for the policy, it's the policy of the City of Cedar Falls to require that the mayor's nominees for certain boards and commissions appear before a standing committee meeting for interview prior to appointment. And the reason for that is under 1A. Some appointed positions in the city possess significant independent authority over Cedar Falls citizens and government processes. This inherent power warrants close scrutiny by the city council for all proposed appointees to these positions. So I'm totally fine either way. I don't have a preference. It's really up to the council's decision of whether you'd want to just do away with the interview at the committee level, or if you want to have it listed. And also for those committee or the interview requirements, I'm going to spell out in here that for 3A, it says after the interview, appointments will only be considered in the next following council meeting to allow council members at least 14 days to consider the nomination. So it wouldn't be an interview and then appearing the same night, which I think happened this last meeting, and I apologize for that. So that's really this in a nutshell. It's only a one-pager. So I wanted to open it up for just council to decide how you want to proceed through the committee.
All right, open for council conversation.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Councilmember Ganfeld.
I know I don't have an exhaustive list of all of our committees or appointed bodies, but this is not all of them.
Right.
And in others, they would interview with the chairperson and director level and an HR person for those appointments. Is that correct?
So the three people for the majority of appointments for standing committees is there's a council member who's either the sort of sponsoring committee, the standing committee's chair, or other designate. So if you couldn't attend a public safety one, then you would designate one of the council members to do it. So there's a council member, there's the chair of that board or commission. As long as it's not the chair's position, then it's somebody else if it's the chair that's up or the position's up. So the board chair, the council member, and then an appointee by Mr. Gaines, so a staff member as well.
Mm-hmm.
And those three together work through to decide the rank order of the candidates and conduct interviews.
I guess the only thing I'm pointing out is why the disparity. I'd like some consistency. I don't know that we have to go to this level. So I'd be in favor of maybe looking at it again just to see about consistency between all the appointed bodies and have that interview happen and then the recommendation come from that interviewing body, not necessarily have to do the standing committee policy. That would be 2 changes though then for these boards, correct?
Well, in this one, if I understand right, you'd be looking to not have the interview here at the standing committee.
Right.
But as it is, every board or commission goes through the other process. There's no exceptions to that.
Yep.
Other council members, thoughts?
I thought this one might generate the most discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
say what your proposal is again, please. Your proposal is to keep it the way it is now as far as every committee has an interview, right?
That would continue, yeah.
Okay, I
Yep.
just was very.
Oh, I
confused by
didn't
all
know.
that.
So these are added some extra.
Yeah, it's one more later. And this was before we had the mayor's process. So I'm just wondering if this still has value to the council.
So
Right.
So you're sorry.
I'll jump in just
Yes.
to clarify, I think. So before, in years past, when the mayors have appointed people to boards and commissions, they've come before council for an interview.
Yeah.
And I've done a number of those in the last 3 years. And while it's always, I guess it's nice to have access, they always seem very uneventful with no questions asked, a thank you, and move on. And so I start to wonder if we are going to do that, we should have a standard set of questions that we will start with and move on. Otherwise, why bring them in? So with the mayor's process, he's kind of started this policy where they have the 3 people, the interview selection committee, then to the mayor, then to council. So the question is, do we bring them in again for another interview? And my answer is, I don't see a need for that interview because you can still pull someone that you don't want to approve. You still have access to their application. You can reach out to people about them. You know about it. So I don't think we need the double interview personally.
Okay, so I got all that, and I do remember that because I've been a part of both those things. But I was just confused by, anyway.
That's okay.
My thought about this, and again, I can go either way, and I don't want to waste somebody's time, but I do love a moment when I get to see somebody's face and recognize that person from our community and recognize that they're giving their time. And I get that it is fairly uneventful, but I do appreciate, even if it's just them here, seeing their face and recognizing, oh, that person who I recognize from somewhere else in my life is serving our city. So that's my one concern about taking that layer away. Now, if it's where we're wasting somebody's time and they're like, why are you hauling me up here? But I do appreciate that moment when we have them, even though it's uneventful, that I get to recognize their face.
Well, as a compromise on that one, we could invite the person to attend the meeting that they're going to be appointed at. I think we have 2 tonight, so we could have them here, and I could just have them say hello to everybody during the receive and file or the approval of the item. Say yes, and we have these people here.
And if you
congratulations on your appointment, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and again,
Without having to have them in front of the dais.
Either way, it's not a hill I'm going to die on, but I do love that moment where I recognize somebody from our community. If they can't come, I get it, but it's nice.
I think it'd be a nice recognition for them too, be a way to introduce them and they could introduce themselves. But this still would keep a interview committee with one of the council members on that
Yes.
interview. Okay.
Yep, that doesn't change.
Good.
So
Go ahead.
the question I had was that disconnect. We've got these 4 bodies that are required to come before standing committee
And
for an interview.
required
So
as a custom.
as a custom, not as a policy.
Not as a policy.
Okay, so my question was, we either do all for that opportunity to recognize and to see them in front of us, or why do we do these only? There could be the disconnect there where we seemingly value some appointments more than others if they don't get that same public airplay. To Gil's point, they all get the same interview, they all get the same vetting. This is by custom, we've done this for these 4 committees. My question is, shouldn't we do them for all then, if it's worth doing? Or we don't do it at all? I'm hearing consensus that we should do it, and so I don't want only these couple that we've customarily done it for.
So the consensus I'm hearing is slightly different. The consensus I'm hearing is that we'd like them here to recognize them and possibly ask them, could we possibly then ask them a question if needed? Or how would that work?
Sure, because that person is going to come before as an approved item, and then the public can speak on that.
So we could
item.
ask
So
them a
you could
question.
ask a question of that.
So rather than having a formal interview, you need to be here to get an interview by council. It's a formal invitation to be recognized. And if any of us have questions at that time for specific ones, we could ask.
Yeah, the only issue then is we couldn't require them to come as part of that.
Fair.
So if they don't show up and there's,
And you,
then,
yeah,
Then it'd be up to us to decide whether to appoint or not.
yeah.
yes,
Or if there's really big questions, you could postpone to the next meeting.
Right.
true. Well, I'll turn it over again, but I'm in favor of, I'll turn it over to council again in a second, but I'm in favor of inviting them here to recognize them and approve the appointments, and if so needed, ask a question or pull one and postpone it, rather than making a formal interview in front of council mandatory. So we can just sit there and say thank you and schedule it during committee time, because I feel like we could use that committee time. If we have 5 appointments, that's 50 minutes. We could use that time in a much more efficient manner. So, Councilmember Cruz?
I like the idea of having them appear on camera so that the citizenry can see who's being appointed, other than reading a name in the paper or something like that. I just think that's a personable touch, and then maybe get citizens more involved with these boards and commissions, having them on the TV, if they so choose to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, so choose your own adventure tonight is either you can, if you vote in favor of moving forward, then I would follow this and make whatever amendments you want, or I won't be offended at all if you vote it down, which would mean, as I said in the cover memo, then I would take that as a directive from the committee of the whole just to end the practice, and while following these new instructions you have.
Yeah, could we just move forward with a recommendation to have it, to not do this, but have more of a informal invitation?
Yeah, there's no harm, there's no reason you can't suggest something else entirely. Yeah.
Well, I'll leave it open for a motion on the table to however someone wants to word it, or a motion to move forward with a formal invitation. I'd entertain that.
I don't know exactly how to word it, but I understand your point of expedience. I also understand that we want people to come. So a hybrid solution of sorts is what I would move, that we would invite them to participate in their appointment. That gives them the opportunity, but to no longer require the standing committee interviews.
Is there a second for that
Second.
motion?
Yeah.
All right. Any conversation on that motion for the moment? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Looks like that passes as well.
Thank you.
And that concludes everything. Unless there's anything else from council, then the council meeting will be in 13 minutes at the top of the hour, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.